What's up, guys? Right, today it's Tuesday. Oh, table's wet. Right, today's Tuesday, and that means it's Electric Tuesday. And today, as has become kind of traditional, I guess, over the last few weeks, we're going to talk about sim racing again. Sorry if you're not into sim racing, it's just becoming a thing for me, and it's actually becoming a big thing in the world of motorsport. So I think it deserves some airtime, I think it deserves some discussion, and whether you like it or not, whether you're into it or not, whether you think it's a bit daft or not, it is going to have some impact on the wider motorsport world. And that, I guess, is what we're going to talk about today. So, for Electric Tuesday in 2019, roll the sting! Now, I talked last week, didn't I, about the crossover between the motorsport world and the sim racing world, and how that is becoming bigger and bigger, how there's such a natural crossover anyway, because the fact that when you're sim racing you're sitting in a seat holding a steering wheel pressing pedals, which is exactly what you do when you're in a real racing car. So there's this immediate crossover that means that the two things are very similar in many aspects, unlike other sports with their virtual counterparts. And what's interesting for me is how the real-world motorsport teams, I talked about the Formula 1 teams getting heavily involved in esports and sim racing now, because of the marketing opportunities, because it's enormous, but also because of the fact that they can actually utilise these very good, highly professional sim racers in their own world, in the real Formula 1 world. Of course, all the teams have their own sims in-house, very sophisticated, very useful pieces of kit. Not just useful for training drivers on, but also for an engineering sense. And somebody mentioned to me in the comments section of a video the other day about whether it might be worth, in fact we answered it in yesterday's Q&A, didn't we, about whether it's worth Formula 1 teams training engineers on sims. And absolutely, and in fact it already happens at most Formula 1 teams. So that idea of crossing over from not just the driving or the entertainment side, which sim racing is great for on every level, but also from the engineering side, from utilising as a tool to make the real world cars go faster. That already happens, it's been happening for a long time, but now we're expanding the platform on which we're able to do that. But also, quite interestingly for me, the FIA, the governing body of the motorsport that we all love, is getting involved and has got involved already in esports. The FIA launched their own esports championship last year in 2018, which went very well, and they're looking to expand that even further with the current growth that esports is seeing right now. And one of the things they're looking to do with that is to use the sim platform as a testing facility for real world ideas. And I don't just mean engineering parts of the car, I mean race kind of formats, new race formats. So if, for example, the FIA wanted to look at testing out the idea of perhaps putting performance ballast onto a car, or the idea of reversing the grids at the start of a race, well, what they can do, of course, is run that simulation many times using pretty accurate software now to see what the potential outcome, what the potential effects, both positive and negative, could be from that. And that's been happening for a while in some areas, but now we're starting to really grow it and really see it as an opportunity. When track testing, real world track testing is so limited, it's limited by the regs in Formula 1, it's limited by cost and availability in so many other areas. Well, you can run sims over and over again, hundreds, thousands of times every single day, and build up a data package that is enormous to then feed back into your real world racing platform. Does it work? Could it offer some benefits in terms of entertainment? Does it give unpredictable outcomes? You know, what are the negative side effects of that we need to be careful of, that we need to mitigate for? Is it going to be dangerous? You know, is having a car that's ploughing down a straight much faster than another car because maybe you've put some performance ballast on, or maybe you've gone for an enormous DRS rear wing flap that suddenly makes the speed differential enormous? Does that create some kind of danger that we hadn't really thought of before? Well, running it through the sims over and over gives you that data to look at, gives you that data to build an informed opinion on. Just realised they were different lengths. That was annoying for the first part of the video. Right, the important thing here is that this isn't just about collecting data. It's not just about running simulations, computer simulations. This is about putting a driver in the loop. And it's not just, as I said the other day, it's not just kids mucking about in their bedroom. These are highly skilled, highly professional sim drivers, esports racers, who can give genuine feedback on the outcomes of some of these trials or these tests. Valuable feedback, feedback that can be fed back into the real world, if you like, and feedback that can be trusted and taken very seriously. And that is because we're building up a level within the sim racing community that is coming towards the level that you find in the real world community. People taking it as seriously. This is an industry, a standalone industry, a sport, if you want to call it a sport, of the same kind of levels, people putting the same effort in, going to the same levels of professionalism. And that's why the F1 teams are getting involved. It's why the FIA are getting involved. They're talking about creating a digital license system through the FIA to enable the very best sim racing drivers to use that digital license they may have acquired through sim racing to then go and compete on a real racetrack in a real car. So the crossover is becoming more and more obvious and more natural. And the other really interesting thing for me, and the really important thing that the advent and the growth of sim racing can do, one of the possibilities that sim racing gives to the motorsport world, is that it opens up the net, it casts the net much wider. One of motorsport's problems is that very few people in the first place get the opportunity to ever try racing, go-karting, however it is they might start. Very few of those, as we now know, have traditionally been girls. So we've got this very small pot of kids, 90% of whom are probably boys, trying karting at grassroots level. You rise that up through the ranks, they all start to disappear, and a very few of those make it to the very top. So the chances of getting, a girl or somebody who comes from poorer backgrounds, doesn't have the means to sustain a karting and a racing career, well, those people are fighting against so many problems, so many barriers to make it to the top. Sim racing opens that door. It enables people with all sorts of restrictions and all sorts of hurdles that they otherwise might have had to climb over to get onto a platform, and particularly the FIA creating a governed championship, a governed ladder which can form part of the overall motorsport ladder. Well, that enables, whether it's kids, whether it's girls, whether it's people from underprivileged backgrounds, whether it's people with disabilities, people who have confidence issues, people who don't want to go and try this new thing of karting or motorsports in amongst other people. Maybe they're concerned, maybe they're worried about not performing, maybe they just have issues about being out in amongst other people trying something new. Well, with sim racing, you can overcome all of those. You can do it with very little. You can do it without very little financial means. You can do it from whatever background you come from. You can do it with disabilities. There are so many different ways to get involved in sim racing at the lowest level, which means that the overall net that motorsport starts to cast in the world becomes much wider, and we have a massive increase in our chances of plucking the very best talent from wherever it might come from to eventually reach the top. I wonder if one day a Formula One world champion, or whatever the pinnacle of motorsport might be at that point, whether it's still Formula One, I wonder whether one day one of those people will have started their racing careers in sim racing. The fact that it's becoming more popular is obviously helping, but also the fact that modern and current Formula One drivers, people like Max, people like Lando Norris, are very publicly racing in sim racing. And that highlights another point, because Formula One and many top-level motorsport, as I touched on the other day, to get into a real car and go track testing is highly, highly limited. Formula One is one of the only sports where it's impossible to train outside of a race weekend. I had a long chat with Nico Rosberg after he won the World Championship, and one of the keys in his mind to winning that championship was that he realised he couldn't train, he couldn't hone his craft outside of a race weekend. So he decided to go back to karting, because he could go and do that whenever he wanted. He could get track time in a car, and he said it sharpened his skills, kept him sharp. Well, sim racing can do that as well, and sim racing can do that at any time of day or night, wherever you are, wherever you want to do it, on whatever platform you want to do it. People like Max Verstappen, people like Lando Norris, I'm sure they may have started out doing this for a bit of fun, but it's a real way of honing your craft and sharpening your skills. And I think that is something that we should not undervalue. So anyway, that was today's Electric Tuesday. I hope that's not just going over old ground. There was an article, and I'll link the article at the end. There's an article on Autosport.com today, which is what inspired today's video, because it was had an interview with the guy from the FIA who was talking about the FIA getting involved in sim racing and esports, and it really highlighted to me just how big a deal this is, and how many opportunities and how many possibilities already are coming from it, but could potentially come from it in the future. I think it's great.